officially call the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is executive session. So the board will return when executive session is over.
Yeah,
I need a motion to go into executive session, please.
maybe, I don't have the meeting packet, is not here on the website, I see.
Oh. Can you hand it to Brad?
Here's the.
Executive. Okay, here you
Two,
go.
four,
You got it?
five.
Here we go.
Yes. I move the select board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 214, Section 1B, and Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 220, 26C, to discuss financial assistance to residents in need.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Maureen, no, I.
Brett Simon's aye.
Laura, have I? Unanimous? We'll adjourn and resume when we finish. I'd like to resume regular session of the Selectmen's meeting at 6:22. So, okay. For anybody watching, Joe is on his way. He is stuck in traffic. We'll be here shortly. So next up is a resolution to formally disband the Community Center Building Committee. Do I hear a motion?
I move that the select board vote to disband the community building committee with gratitude for the service to the town of the following members: James Brochu, Chair; Paul Flaherty, Vice Chair; Steve Racketon, Clerk; Dee Hackla, Member; Michael Howell, Member; Justin Pollard, Member; and Don Spargo, Member.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. They did a wonderful job. We have a beautiful building. It's used extensively. We appreciate all your hard work, and Mr. Flaherty, since you're in the room, we know you had no intentions of taking it over, but kudos.
Like I said the other night, not on time, but on the budget.
Which is always good to
That's
hear.
always good.
We like that.
All right.
Next up,
To get back into.
Miss Chief McGowan. How are you? We're here to accept your resignation.
No, it's.
Well, on my 3B, interim police chief, acceptance of resignation. Well, it's been a pleasure. And I have to tell you that I heard through the grapevine that you wish you had found Upton many years ago, which is a huge compliment to us, and we appreciate it.
It's a very neat place. You've ruined me for the other talent.
Oh, beautiful. That's what we like to do, you know? So do I hear a motion?
What school are you gonna get to a breakfast?
Yes.
So, yes, and we recognize that you're here for another reason and not
Yes.
for this.
Yeah.
We'll take care of this administrative
Okay.
task and later get to the reason that you're actually
And
here.
we know you're not really totally leaving because there's like with Chief Bradley, we kind of put our hooks into you and we don't really ever let go.
I move that the select board vote to accept the resignation of interim police chief Peter McGowan effective Thursday, February 6, 2025.
With regrets. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Like I said, we truly appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
No, that isn't.
So we have on 4A, acceptance of a donation from ESF.
Bring it.
On the back, she double sided.
Oh,
Okay. Do I hear a motion? Yeah,
good.
yes,
Well, you guys.
you got it?
No.
Okay, I can read the motion unless you have questions.
Okay,
or-
Maureen, we are on page 6. You're double sided.
I know. Both sides.
You can tell who's the control freak I'm trying to take over. Us type A's.
Well,
We'll let them catch up for them.
Yeah, we will.
yeah,
We're slightly discombobulated once we move.
boy,
all
I
bets are
guess. I don't know. Well, let's see.
Steve.
Be nice, be nice. Yeah. All I have is the draft, so that's okay. All right.
You can read mine.
I got, no, I got.
Brett's got the motion.
I can read
Read
it.
it.
Just wanted to
You
make
just
sure
have to
you-
say it.
Make
You
sure.
can-
your
I'll,
ladies are
I'll
all
be the
set.
second person.
Okay, there we go.
I move that the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, to accept the following donations to the Town of Upton Department of Elder and Social Services. $100 donation to enhance services and programs in the senior center from John Sallin in memoriam of Richard Blodgett, who was a beloved member of the community and frequented the senior center. And the second from the Upton Fire and EMS Association in the amount of $107 to support the Upton Food Pantry.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I
Unanimous. Okay. Next up is the police department request for a wellness grant. Feel free to come over to the hot seat. I warn everyone, they're on wheels, it's wood, you are going to take off.
Yep. So I'm gonna.
Yeah. Yes, and could you introduce yourselves for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Peter McGowan, the former interim police chief, apparently, from here through.
And Sarah Planner and the school resource officer.
Thank you.
So Maya has a wellness grant, and after speaking with Officer O'Connor, we thought it'd be a good idea to try and start a comfort dog program. A lot of area towns have them, and they've been widely successful. So a comfort dog wouldn't be the typical German Shepherd attack dog like you see on TV. It's more of a companion for anybody that needs it for stress or for a myriad of reasons. So why we're here today is Maya offers a grant in the amount of $5,000. If the town were to accept that grant, we'd use that initial payment for the dog would be about $3,000 from a breeder that we've checked out quite extensively. And then $2,000 to put towards the initial training and supplies. To be perfectly clear that there are going to be some additional expenses that they're going to have to be appropriated somehow. A one-time startup cost, in addition to the $5,000 that the grant is covering, would be looking at vests, leashes, training treats, what have you, about $800 to get the program going. And then to upfit a cruiser, it would be about $6,000 to get the cage that would go in the backseat for the dog. It would be air conditioned. It would be climate controlled with alarms to make sure that the dog was safe in the car. That's a one-time startup. Annually, you'd be looking at around $2,200 a year to run the program, about $650 a year for food, estimating about $1,000 a year for the vet, and about $500 a year for follow-up training and refresher training for both the dog and the officer. So the initial commitment, in addition to the grant, would be around $65,000 to $7,000. And then annually going forward would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,200. Obviously, we don't have the money in the budget for this year, and it hasn't been put in the budget going forward because we don't have the program. Ask Officer O'Connor to talk about some ideas she has for the program.
Yeah, so along with that, obviously there's a significant cost to get this program up and running. I know that the wellness grant can cover the dog and initial training. But we can look at outside resources for additional funding through nonprofits, town fundraisers, or I've spoken with the Worcester DA's office about possibly getting funding from them as well, to get this program up and running. I think that it can have a great benefit to the schools. I've already spoken with the Mendon Upton School District Administration, who is on board. As school resource officer, I'm there Monday through Friday. And I think that with the uptick in mental health crisis, having a dog there as a companion can definitely bridge that gap between myself and the community. And not only that, it's not just for the schools, it's for the town. We would be at community events, the community center, any type of senior events, anything in town, we would be available for, not only for the community, but for the officers as well during critical incidents. They are there to help out in any way that they can. When another person may not be someone that you want to talk to, that dog is there to be that companion, like Chief said, for those individuals.
I can speak from experience. I had a child with terminal cancer. He treated at Children's and the Jimmy Fund, and it's a proven fact that comfort dogs lower your blood pressure. They calm. It's truly amazing what they do. And to say nothing of the smile that lit up his face when they came in. It's truly, and I would see it because we were past them in the halls and everyone. And I assume too that it wouldn't just be a comfort dog. Hopefully, you know, with all of our state forests, maybe a search and rescue.
That's that we're also looking into.
Mhm.
We've actually looked into that as well. They aren't able to start training for that until they're bigger.
Right.
But we're looking into that as well. There is a friendly fine training course that we can do at additional costs, but we can look at that down the road. But we think that would be a benefit to the community as well.
This will all have to be budgeted and approved. But Brett, do you have any questions or comments?
I would say I absolutely support the program. I think it's great that the state is providing the grant. I think that the incremental funding is relatively nominal for the town. And I think, you know, I want to commend you, Officer O'Connor, for your initiating this process and taking the steps to go through this. It's obviously, you know, extra work on top of all of the other things that you're doing, taking care of the school and all your normal duties. So thank you for your leadership in this program, and you certainly have my support.
Maureen?
Thank you for bringing this forward. I did have one question, is where is the dog housed?
The dog would be housed with me, so I would be the primary handler. So it would be coming home to me every evening.
Great, great.
Actually, I have one more.
Yes.
I didn't mention in my initial remarks. I've spoken with Chief Palmieri. He's 100% on board with this program. Franklin, the department where he's coming from, actually has 2 comfort dogs.
Mhm.
So he knows the untold benefits.
It truly, to say nothing of the good PR, because they tend to be very cute.
Little ones, we're gonna need little ones.
Maybe well, it depends on what color dog we get. Let's get a black lab and then it won't be as obvious.
I move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to submit the fiscal year 2025 MIAA wellness grant to fund the Upton Police Department's acquisition of a comfort dog and associated costs.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you for bringing it forward. Yeah.
Will they 5,000 paper to 7,500?
So yes, the initial grant offering when that program came out was 7,500 per town, up to 7,500 per town. The closing date on the grant is February 7th, I think, and that's all that's left. So we had originally submitted for the full 7,500, and Maya got back to us and said, unfortunately, we're only able to apply for 5,000.
And another question, 2 officers gonna go through the training or just you? I'm asking because if you leave, the dog has to go somewhere else, right? The dog is Upton's. You say you go work in Franklin.
No.
So I'm just saying, I was just using very.
Right.
So you go anywhere, you decide.
So the unique thing about comfort dogs is they're essentially obedience trained. It can be housed with other officers. So only one officer needs to go through the initial training with them. I can assure you that I have no intentions of leaving. But we would have a secondary officer who I can train, but they will just be trained in obedience and things like that. They'll have the certifications for the dog itself. And then I can get the other officer up to date on being that secondary handler if I'm not available.
Maybe it's a way to retain police personnel.
You leave, take your daughter.
Exactly. Break your heart. Paul?
Finance committee here, we just sit here, but tonight,
You may ask a question, yes.
if the handler has an event or a situation outside of the handler's regular shift, does that not become an overtime shift? And I'm specifically
Yes.
excluding Kara over here. I
Right.
said the handler.
May I answer that?
Yes, please, because I don't know.
When an officer takes on a commitment such as this, they understand the unbelievable commitment to it to make it a success. And normally they'll do almost anything to make sure this is successful. We're not going to violate Fair Labor Standards Acts or anything like that. I'm sure that the handler would be more than amenable to accepting comp time, compensatory time that can be used at a later date that would not incur overtime.
Like I said at the beginning, it's just because I put my finance committee hat on, right, that I asked the question.
Well, we specifically didn't include any salary impacts to town because we honestly don't foresee anything that couldn't be absorbed nominally into the budget.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think, folks.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Very
night.
much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Oh.
for your service.
I say we clear.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
You'll be
initiative.
around.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Come soon. Carol and Barbara.
Okay.
Karen.
Okay, next up, Joe, we are on 4C, review and approval of Eastern Salts contract. Gonna seamlessly roll right in.
Exactly.
Take it
So this is pretty straightforward. This is a contract for additional salt. It is above 25,000, so therefore the select board must vote to authorize the execution of said contract.
Which looks like we might need it on Thursday.
I move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Eastern Minerals as proposed in the attached contract.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Town manager report, please.
So you all should have a copy of this as well.
I handed that out earlier.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes, we've got it. Thank you.
So just want to let the board know that the contract with Chief Belmary has been executed and he will be starting on February 10th, so next Monday. There will be an official swearing in ceremony on February 27th at 10 a.m. here in the main hall of Upton Town Hall. Invitations were sent out and it's been sent out to the community so that we can have a nice community welcoming event. The DPW Building Committee is meeting this coming Thursday and will conduct interviews with 3 top-ranked companies for owner project manager services. The OPM is important, not only out of procurement law, but also to assist, really make sure that we can deliver a efficient, cost-effective project to the town. We only have authorization for 25% of the design plans. The work will allow us to not only seek final design plans, but then also to seek construction funding. That would be at a subsequent town meeting. Right now, it looks like it would be fall of 2025. With all of the concentrating on budget and meeting with departments, I haven't finalized the EDIS-V RFQ. I'll be doing that this week for town council services, and we'll have it on the board's agenda on February 11th. MBTA communities, we did receive notification, the state that we are in interim compliance. People may be aware there was a lawsuit that was filed by Milton and a couple other towns that challenged the legality of MBTA communities. The Supreme Court had identified that MBTA communities was legal, but the implementation of the regulations was not. So the state has draft regulations that are out. It's public comment period. Once those are finalized and approved, then our application will be reviewed for full compliance. This does allow us to maintain eligibility for state grants, Mass Works, Housing Works. Next, there will be a Mendon Upton multi-board meeting. It will be 6 p.m. At the high school. The purpose is to discuss the 2 capital articles that were submitted. One article is replacement of the high school roof, and the second, which is going to be partially funded through funds through MSBA. I don't have the exact percentage yet. And the second is to fund an article for capital needs for the district and high school field replacements. This follows up on the discussion that the board held a workshop on back in August. FISGAF project is out to bid. Bids are going to be due back February 27th, and expect that we will present the contract to execute that work with the board on March 4th. Once we have a contractor engaged, we can then identify a start date and start getting information to the residents on that project and that construction schedule. For Milford Street Water and Sewer Extension Project, last week we had held a bid openings. There were 12 responses, 2 of which two of those responses were within budget. So we're finalizing doing our due diligence. And we are also then going to be, now that we have figures, we can finalize the development agreement and bring both for the board end of February, beginning of March to discuss and get rolling. Holy Angels, this Wednesday I'm meeting with town staff as well as the consultant who did the structural analysis for Holy Angels back in 2019. The idea is to have them engage their services to not only update that structural report, but also to start to identify what would be needed to bring up the building to be habitable and eligible for a certificate of occupancy. So for example, coming up on February 11th, that's when the venue proponents were going to be coming back in. One of the things that we're going to be discussing with the engineers is, almost like getting an idea of what would be the biggest load for them. So if you have some sort of commercial kitchen in the facility, you have some sort of AV, high electric load use. What is that actually going to cost us from fire suppression, ADA compliance? Pretty much the building has been gutted for a lot of it, especially on the basement floor, but we're going to have to do some asbestos and also mold remediation. What are we looking at so that we can start to develop a plan for either coming to town meeting for the funds or securing other grants for those funds? Without that piece of information, that's an important thing. It's important for not only discussing the venue as a proposal, but also that structure and what that would be for a commitment. So we're pulling together that information starting with this meeting on Wednesday, and the idea is to present some of that information for the board on the 11th. Ultimately, I think what that will result in is some sort of article seeking funding to do this study to then do this work. For the tip enhancement project and Commons Master Plan, the board had authorized my endorsing of contracts for CHA. And we held the workshop a meeting ago to decide on light fixtures. We're going to be meeting, staff's going to be meeting with them on Wednesday to talk about what say a community outreach design charrette form is going to look like. We're getting some ideas for calendar, and we'll be able to give the board an update on the 11th. The Main Street 140 tip project, I actually just got an update on this over the last hour. So the select board, along with the EDC and historical, all discussed and agreed and came to a consensus on lighting fixtures. Those specifications were provided to MassDOT. I just heard this afternoon after I prepared this that They are incorporating that, but the 75% design plans are going to be pushed back to the first week of April. They did acknowledge that the town wants to hold a public outreach, and I did let them know that, yes, of course we do. And they asked if MassDOT should participate. I said, yes, they should.
They should.
I am going to be asking them for a status plan update because there's a lot of items that I think we should have a look at before the 75%. Namely, they were going to be looking at a small parking lot on the grassed area next to Racine. To just have that presented as part of the 75%, I'd like to be able to have staff and the board take a look at it so we can at least provide some direction. So I will be asking for an interim set of plans while they're working on those. So at least we can start to evaluate. There's so much that they talked about doing, and it's been a long time since we saw updated plans.
I'd like to make sure everything we talked about, that we're all on the same page.
Exactly.
That what we've agreed to and what we assume is going to be there actually is before we put it out to the public and say this is 75% and we're going, oh, but this wasn't.
Exactly.
Yes, I agree.
So I just got that just in the last hour. So, you know, again, realistically, once we have those plans, if it is beginning of April, we're pretty much looking at probably the 15th of May.
Okay.
Because we'd want to have them available for the public to look at and make sure that we can get appropriate comments and responses, even from town departments.
And you'll need to notify the state that that's town meeting and election. So try not to conflict with those.
Well, we're going to be inviting them.
I would just, well, one never knows what the state does or how much time they need.
So that is it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Town manager. We're talking about the parking lot where the old telephone office used to be. Is that in lieu of parking on the street?
No.
In supplement too.
All right.
Okay, right now it's public input or board member update. Does anybody have any public input? If anybody's online and they have public input, if you can raise your hand, I guess. If Joe, you know, if anyone, I don't see anyone here.
And he is, Nick, and scope financial.
That's fine, as
Yeah,
long
it's
as
the bottom
nobody
line.
responds. I don't see anybody asking for input. I have a question. I was approached yesterday about the replacement of the toilets on the senior center side of the community center. Where does that stand? Because I was informed by a very irate person that this was requested 1.5 years ago because some woman got stuck. And it was very mortifying for both her and the person that had to help her. So
Yeah.
where are we with, I know we approved the new toilets. Have they been installed or when will they be installed? Do we know?
I'll find out from Dennis. So we did, 3 weeks ago, the plumber who did the work here, had, conducted a site visit to look and provided Dennis a quote. We were getting the as-built plan so that we could have essentially the blocking behind and understand what was behind the existing toilets. And get that work done. Ultimately, and we have an esteemed former member of the building committee here as well. There were intermediate solutions that were being looked at, including putting on plastic seats.
Right.
Right.
So ultimately, it was determined that, no, just go ahead and just replace the toilet. So that is in process. On the 11th, Dennis is going to be here as well to provide updates on various things. I'll make sure that we're prepared to get that timeline out.
I promised the resident that asked me what was going on, that I would ask and inquire tonight, get an answer and get back to them.
Madam Chair, keep in mind that the building as it sits today is ADA compliant.
It is. It is. This was. There were extenuating circumstances to our conversation. And like I said, I get it and I understand. Oh, I'm sure. So that's fine. I just wanted an update because I said I knew we had approved it, so. Problem solved and addressed. Okay, next, licensing, Blackstone Valley Regional High School, 1-day beer and wine license.
This is what they have every year, right?
This is the superintendent's dinner.
Yes.
Yes. Any discussions or do I hear a motion?
Hey, I can do this motion.
Okay, there you go.
I'm already.
She's got her glasses, she's got her paper,
Yes.
she's cooking with gas.
I love it. Ready? Do it.
I move that the select board vote to approve the application submitted by Michael F. Fitzpatrick for the Blackstone Valley Vocational Regional School District for a special 1-day wine and malt only pouring license for a fundraising event to be held on March 20th, 2025, under Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 14, to be held at 65 Pleasant Street, BVVRSD Competition Center, Upton, Mass.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, so, it's 6:51, the joint meeting with the finance committee. Mr. Flaherty, would you like to call your meeting to order? Mr. Burnwood? Okay. Do we have a quorum, Mr. Byrne? And you can, if it's easier, you can come over here. Wherever, you can stay there, whatever works for you. It is 6:52. Okay. So,
So we should have Kenny Costa. I see at least a K and a C for initials on Teams.
right now he's muted. Kenny, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
There.
We can even see you now too.
That's great.
And just logistics, Kenny, do you have the slide or do you want me the slides or do you want me to share my screen?
I have the slides. I will say I was having some computer issues earlier. Would you mind projecting the slides for me,
No, not at all.
just in case we have a glitch?
Yep.
We know why he's showing up on video on top, but I'm down below.
No. Joe, do you?
Apparently IT fixed it.
Oh.
I explained to Sue, I never used the top
No,
and we found it was unplugged and
I expect that it will look differently once he starts sharing his screen.
it will, it should pop up on the screen down below.
Yes, it has two screens and only one was being used.
Yeah, now Sean's the one showing up on top.
Oh, wait. We have two instances of Teams.
That's what he was saying, that's what he found.
Okay, let me,
Would you like for me to try? See if I can.
we just have, if you want to give us a second, Kenny, we have two screens, one of which we have never used in the past, which is now working. And the second, which we're hoping is our backup and we'll be able to see the PowerPoint on.
so
Okay,
let
great.
me first, I just want to see for our purposes where it shows up.
We can just.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Take your chance.
And are we recording anything on the, have we been recording the wrong instance of Teams because it's on the top?
It looks like it's the same. It looks like it is
Two different screens.
just,
Can you share a screen?
just gonna sort of force it to only be on one screen.
Great.
Something's happening. Maybe.
There you go.
Teams.
That's fine. We just
Nice
have
work.
two of them. Yeah.
I think they were always duplicated, but there's a reason why the board authorized a redo.
Good.
Visual.
In case anyone doesn't know, we're gonna redo the room.
Answer Steve's
Our
question.
table will be over there. There'll be two screens this way. It'll be much easier. We're making
At least
progress.
this
We're
makes
working
sense
on
As
it.
opposed to seeing Kenny on one screen and not seeing him on the other screen.
Right.
That I didn't understand.
Okay, Kenny.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, select board members. So today, similar to previous years, we're doing a financial overview. On the agenda tonight, we have the status of the fiscal year 25 budget, how we're doing on expenditures and revenues, just big picture. And then we'll dive into fiscal year 26 revenue projections, looking at taxes, including growth, state aid, local receipts, available funds, and then showing preview of a balanced, current balanced budget of fiscal year 26 with revenues and expenditures. And then lastly, we'll have the community comparison, just various financial information to share. So the next slide. So the status of the 25 budgeted revenues as of November 2024. The tax rate was approved on December 9th by DOR, which setting the tax rate at $13.15 per thousand. As part of that, new growth was estimated at 250,000. However, DOR, through their review, it was actually approved at 190,310. So each year, during this process for the budget, we estimate what new growth is, and it actually came in less than what we estimated by 59,690. So because of our conservative nature approach, budgeting revenues, it allowed flexibility to offset the shortfall of 59,690. So that's important to note. State aid was kept level with the 25 budget, no major increases. Local receipts as part of the tax recap are estimated at 2.4 million. And uncertainty remains in the economy, concerns with inflation, real estate market, and wars may affect the economy. So these are things, trends that we're monitoring and and continuing to be conservative in nature as far as estimating revenues. The next slide. So this is revenues through November of 2024. Just looking at the three key revenue items: property tax, local receipts, state aid. We're almost at property tax. We're almost at 50%, so they remain strong. Local receipts, they're a little lagging due to the cyclical motor vehicle excise. So typically we send out motor vehicle excise tax bills around, we're prepping now. Typically they go out in March. So there's motor vehicle excise, those revenues will come in, end of March, April through the end of the fiscal year. So there's a little bit of a lag on motor vehicle excise, state aid, state revenue. That is, on a monthly basis. So that's on target. Next slide is fiscal year 25 expenditures as of December 31st. So essentially a half a year, 6 months. For most departments, we're looking okay. So debt service that you see here, the 67%, That is because we make two semi-annual payments. The principal payment is usually the first payment in the year. So that's why. So not all expenses, they're not all monthly. For example, with insurance and other, our pension assessment, we pay that on July 1st. So we can realize savings on that payment. But yes, a lot of departments, they are on a monthly. But if you look at overall, looking at the budget, we're at 53%. So we're about, halfway through the year. So we're halfway. So we're about 50%. So if you look at total overall budget, we're about 50%. The next slide. So now we're diving into fiscal year 26 as far as revenues forecasting. Just to look at the highlighted items from the recap to proposed property tax, we're looking at a $750,000 increase, which is about just under 3%. And that is your new growth and your Prop 2.5, the automatic increase is the lion's share of that amount. State aid, a very small increase to state aid compared to the recap. Local receipts from it's flat, 2.4 to 2.4. So we're only looking at 8,791. So gross revenues, we're looking for fiscal year 26, 29,833,027. In a couple of slides, you will see the overlay so we set monies aside for tax abatements. We're estimating 170,000. So you'll see that net in the next couple of slides. So gross revenues, we're looking at just under 800,000 and 2.75% increase. And of course, this could change between now and the end, by town meeting. We're monitoring state aid. So if there's any increases or decreases, our recommendation would be to make those adjustments before the town meeting. On the next slide, this is the tax levy forecast. This takes you through the calculation. So it takes you from 2020 to 2026. So the 2025, that's been approved. As you can see, the new growth, it's been ranging between 300 to as high as almost 500,000 in 2022. However, in 2025, new growth was 190,310. So as you can see, it is starting to slow. So we're estimating this year, with consultation with the assessors, Board of Assessors, we're estimating 130,000 for fiscal year 2026. We don't want to be in the same situation in 2026 where we're overestimate and we're looking to offset any decreases. So it's a decrease of about 60,000. Debt exclusion, we did see a decrease from 24 to 25, and that was due to the Mendon Upton. There was a debt exclusion for capital projects for the new school, at the time, the new schools, the construction projects. So there was a decrease there, so that remains level from 25 to 26. So we're estimating a total tax levy of 26,232,850, which is it's 2.8% for fiscal year 26.
Kenny, this is the first time that I can ever remember in my long tenure here that we didn't make the estimated new growth number.
You are correct. And that was very concerning because that's a number that we always aim to be conservative. So what happened was, since we didn't make the new growth number through the tax levy, I needed to offset that with local receipts because we're conservative. But if we didn't have the flexibility with local receipts, that would be something that, we would have a revenue deficit, which would be a bigger issue that we would have to, work out. But no, that you're correct. I mean, I can say, over a decade, this is the first time that we didn't make the new growth number.
You're saying 10, and I'm saying 25 to 30 that we didn't make it.
I'm sorry.
You said 10 years that we didn't make it. My recollection is it's at least 25 or 30 years that we missed the.
It could.
Right.
I can only speak to 10 years. I'm sure you can speak to a lot longer than that. But I can tell you, it was a concern of mine, and I had to offset that with local receipts, in particular with motor vehicle excise. I needed to offset that. But due to our conservative budget approach, I was able to, offset that with local receipts, thankfully.
What you're saying is you better get Governor's Landing going quick, because we're gonna need some new growth.
Second half of Cobblers Creek's coming online, so that'll be 25 more units at almost $1 million each.
Next fiscal year.
Right. So that
They
could be a fiscal year
building now.
27.
You know the guy that bought Crosswinds bought Petey's property, right? The guy that built Crosswinds,
Yeah.
Petey's. It's 22 acres with frontage on Mechanic Street.
That's okay, there's a lot of swamp in between there, Paul, I'm not worried about it.
We don't get all the taxes though.
I understand.
Okay. Even after they pull the occupancy permit.
I understand that.
That's why they should have voted that taxing at time of occupancy.
Okay, Kenny, you're still going, we're arguing with each other. Talking
Thank
about
you.
the real estate forecast.
So the next item, state aid. If you look at Chapter 70, that's been flat, since 2020. And looking at general government, which commonly referred to UGA, the unrestricted general government aid. So from fiscal year 25 to 26, I mean, we're looking at a slight 14,000. And these revenue numbers, these estimates, this is all straight from the governor's budget. I updated this in the last week. So when I started this presentation, I did not have those numbers. And I did see there was going to be about a 2.2% increase. But then once the numbers were available, I did update the budget. I did update this slide to include the governor's budget. So, hopefully, as the budget evolves through the process, hopefully there will be another slight increase once it's approved. But if there is a decrease, it's something that we'll have to look at. But the other, the other numbers, veterans benefits, slight increase, veterans and elite exemptions, an increase from about 40,000 to 64,000. So, an increase there. State-owned land, about $20,000. Public libraries, which is it's an offset. This actually lives in another fund. It's about 22,000, a slight increase. So I mean, we're looking at about an increase about $62,000, about a 5.5% from 25. So that's the monies that the state giveth, and then they also take it away with various assessments and charges. And that's increasing by about $4,000. So total net state aid, we're looking at a slight increase of $1,038,000 to $1,096,000 for fiscal year 26. On the next slide, this is local receipts. So I show here fiscal year 20 to 24 recap. I did put in a column for fiscal year 24 actuals, and this is all summarized. And then the 25 recap. So as you can see, motor vehicle excise, we've had some years where it's approaching $1 million. And then it jumped up to $1.6 million due to the because we did budget 1.3, about 1.3 last year because of the shortfall in the new growth. I did need to bump that up this line so we can set the tax rate. But I'm looking in fiscal year 26, $1,325,000. On the next slide, I'll show you my rationale, how I got there. But I just wanted for you to see just kind of a big picture, the recap. And I did include one column for fiscal year 24 actuals and showing 25 recap and 26 proposed. Penalties and interest, we did increase that from 85,000 to 100,000. So penalties and interest, these are late fees, penalties and interest on its real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, tax title, payment in lieu, very small amount. This is from the federal government, from federal property. It's only $214. The next item, fees, which the lion's share, it's the police department police fees for the student resource officer at BVT and Mendon Upton Regional. We're looking at $179,600. And then the next is the other departmental revenue. We did have some increases from the fiscal year 25 recap to 26 for other departmental revenue. License and permits, the majority of that is building permits. We're also increasing that item as well, but there is some concern as we're decreasing. We're seeing a slow in new growth, so that's a concern. Fines and forfeitures, it's about level. Investment income, this is a tough one to budget. As you can see, in fiscal year 24, we had actuals of 429,000 that we collected. In the recap, we showed 30,000. And next slide, I'll show you where just a 5-year trend on investment income. I would love to increase this line item, but I do have concerns. I'll show you that on the next slide. So we did increase it from 30,000 to 50,000. So from the 24 recap to the 25 recap, we did have an increase, a little bit over $400,000. And for fiscal year 26, we're looking to keep it level.
Can I ask a question? What's gonna cause motor vehicle excise tax to go down? So if our actual vehicle excise tax is 1.6 million, the numbers that you have to the left of that are all your estimates. Those aren't the actuals. So the 1.6 is an actual. The year before that, it was 1.3. The year before that, it was 1.36. The year before that, 1.32. 1.315. So
The next slide is a little easier to look at.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we can
It
look at
shows
the
the
next slide,
actuals.
so I can.
Your question is still valid, obviously, but the next slide, just because he has just the actuals on the next slide. And it looks like a lot of that's from investment income, but I don't know where the investment income is coming from.
yeah, no, this isn't. These numbers don't tie back to the actual recap that Kenny does. So I don't know. I asked them for what the details were, but motor vehicle excise tax, I just don't know. Someone would have to move, or you'd have to get rid of your car.
We're talking about your finance.
Why did it go up? Totally, but why did it go up so much? Right, because it went from 1 point.
It's 131.
1 point.
These are
These are all recaps. So the actuals, yeah. So if I look on the next slide, motor vehicle excise has been 1.3 actuals for the past 5 years. He's got that. And then this year it went from 1.3 to 1.6. So why did it go up so much? And to your point, understanding that's going to help us understand why would it go down? Like, why did it go up and why would it go down?
If you look at the price of vehicles.
I don't know. That's a question.
The excise,
But it's, I can't imagine the.
They depreciate every.
the excise tax is based on a number that the state applies, not what you pay for your car or anything. The
Right.
state
Right.
sets the value and the tax rate is $25 per $1,000 valuation that the state says. But then you get to an older vehicle, it's like a stick, it's a minimum, like 25.
Goes down to 10%.
So maybe we'll let Kenny answer. So Kenny, why would it go down and why did it go up? So Steve and I have both sides of the same question.
And that's a great question. So we don't know if it was just a 1 year. I do know there's been a delay as far as sending out tax bills, because I've been noticing in the subsequent year. So I mean, a lot of this is just previous years. There's a lot of late commitments that I see that come through. But as far as, why there is such a large increase, as you know, like new growth, I mean, we've experienced, so I think a lot of it is just catching up. But again, I don't know if this is just a 1 year increase of 1.6. But if you take a 5-year average, we're at 1.386. I mean, this is something that I've had in the past. We've had conversations with the rating agencies, with S&P. They recommend certain revenue items to look at 5-year trends and to be conservative. So yeah, I mean, looking at 1.3 and going to 1.6, I don't know if this is a new trend or this is just a lot of catch up. I mean, I would say there's a big piece of it that is catching up from previous years. But the 1.6, I mean, we'll wait to see how much of that is actually going to, going forward. But at this point, I mean, I only feel comfortable going, my recommendation would be 1.3, staying on 1,325,000, just looking at, the trend.
Kenny, by the time town meeting comes, we will have received that we should have collected the first commitment of the excise taxes, right?
Yes, we'll receive a large portion of it, correct. But
But
no,
there's continuous commitments that come in during the year.
Yeah, no, but the first one is the biggest.
Biggest.
The first is the biggest, and then I typically see some years there's 4 or 5 supplementals, and they go all the way through like August and September into the new fiscal year.
But to your point, Paul, right? Like that would at least be an indicator of like, are we going to be closer to 1.6 or closer to 1.3?
What did the first commitment last year show?
Well, that's what I mean.
What is the first of this year? It's usually out by February.
Right. I know, because I was thinking that the other day, I said I should be paying an excise tax bill first week of March. But again, the value of the car is set by the state, not.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the levers. Kenny's been very conservative, which has helped us, but in times when we're looking at cutting services, this is some place where you can put around and still be conservative. So that was the reason for my question.
I mean, when I look at revenues, I do look at some revenues as prior year, but in motor vehicles. So what I tried to do in this slide, I tried to take the bigger ticket items. Just, in our revenue report, there's about 60 lines. So there's a lot of accounts, a lot of detail. So what I tried to do with this slide here, I tried to look at the lines, the biggest items from the tax recap, and tried to show you here the rationale and like where we're budgeting. So like for example, we talked about investment income. So in actuals in 2020, we had 34,000, 20,000 in 21, and 22,000. And then it ballooned up to 2023, it ballooned up to 338,000, major increase. And that's because of the ARPA funding that we received. And that ARPA funding, it's been approved, it's been appropriated. So, a lot of those ARPA funds will go away in the next year because all ARPA funds need to be expended by 12/31/2026. So we had $2 million in the bank that we were collecting interest, and that would go to the general fund. We won't have the $2 million come by the end of 2026. So I'm expecting this number to go down. So my concern would be if we received 338,429. If we increase this to 400,000 or 425 for fiscal year 26, my concern, would be that we'd be reducing that number for the fiscal year 27 and beyond, and then we would have to cut, or we'd have to find an offset in revenues. So as you can see, and I don't know, it could be in fiscal year 27. I just don't know where interest rates are going to go, but I know we don't have the ARPA funding, that we've had. I know we have, stabilization funds, but the stabilization monies, that stays within the stabilization. But as far as general fund revenue, yes, we've collected 338,429, but I just don't see going forward without that ARPA funding. I just don't see, and then also with interest rates. So if there's cuts to the interest rates, I expect this number to go down. I mean, I have increased it to 50,000. It's something we'll have to monitor. If interest rates stay, stay on the higher side. But this is something that I struggle, that I look at. I don't feel comfortable going to 400,000 or 425 just because we received that in fiscal year 24. Just knowing the fact that we have ARPA funds, I just don't think it's a good conservative approach, to take. And unfortunately, so the 429, a lot of that does go to the bottom line. It does go to free cash, as an example. So I try to look at other revenues as well. So ambulance service, 2 lines above, we've been collecting 226, 223. The last couple of years, 329, 344. If you take the 5-year average, we're at about 278,000. Again, these are ambulance runs. It's something that, it's tough. I mean, on this one, my preference would be to take the 5-year average. We'll have to keep monitoring this. If we are collecting 300,000 in the future, I mean, we can increase this item. But I think on the conservative approach, we're going with 275. The line above, police department miscellaneous fees. So we now have both BVT and Mendon-Upton Regional. Both there's an agreement, an MOA agreement. So here, if you look at the 5-year average, it's 113,313. So I'm actually increasing it to 125, knowing that we do have agreements with both. So that one, in this instance, I didn't take the 5-year average. I've been looking at the last couple of years. So in that instance, I did increase it to 125. Down below, building permits, that one we've 175 just knowing that new growth is decreasing on a 5-year average. It is 228, 624, but our recommendation is 125, just knowing that new growth is slowing. We just didn't wanted to be conservative, be cautious on that. Trash bag from the Board of Health, trash bag fees, the pay-as-you-throw program. We've been at 254, 284 to 269. On a 5-year average, it's 269, 749. We're budgeting 245. Perhaps in the future, maybe we can increase this by about $20,000, but not, there's nothing really here significant. So not all these items tie to the recap. All I tried to do is I tried to take all the material amounts, all the material categories. If I took every category and did a 5-year average, I mean, this would be probably 3 or 4 slides, because we do have over 60 accounts associated with it. If you wanted to get into the weeds or into the more granular, into the account. So what I tried to do is I just tried to keep it to 1 slide and just showed, just all of the, the major revenue sources for local aid.
Okay, Kenny, I believe Rick McGuire has a question. I see a hand. Rick?
Yes, a question to the chair and to Kenny. When you're discussing investment income, I understand and agree with you that the ARPA balance will go down, so I understand that. But my question is, first, what type of investments are you investing in? Is it money markets? And the second part of the question, what rate are you getting? And lastly, are there any state regulations that state it must be a certain type of investment?
It is, if I may. So yes, we are restricted. We're not able to invest in the stock market. It needs to be very conservative. So we're looking at money markets, CDs, just very traditional investing. As I said, we're not able to invest this in the stock market. Our treasurer, Jessica Gomez, I mean, she's looking at competitive rates. There's a lot of competition out there. I mean, we're getting the best rates. I mean, I'm seeing the revenue. I mean, we're collecting about, in the general fund, it's about $50,000 a month. But with the ARPA funding going away soon, I just don't think that's sustainable. I mean, it's great that it's coming in now, but I think for the town, I think to take the conservative approach and having that fall to the bottom line, because if we take those revenues now and counting those revenues now, yes, they're coming in now, but I almost feel like it's a sugar high, because in a couple of years that money's going to go away, that ARPA funding is going to go away, and the interest income's not going to be there, and then we'll have to cut. And I just don't feel that's taking a conservative approach on that category.
Well, right now, money markets are around 4%, 4.3 if you do a lot of research. Are we getting anywhere near the 4%, or are we at lower rates?
I believe I did look at. I believe we're getting anywhere, in various investments. I think it's anywhere between like 3 and 5% that we're getting, because of course we also have to spread those funds around for FDIC and DIF. So we have to protect the funds of the town. So it does vary.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Maureen has a question.
Just Kenny, is that realized gain, that 50,000 a month, or is that unrealized?
Realized.
Okay.
Steve, did you have a question? No. Okay.
No, it just seems like more than 3%.
Yeah, I
300,000
think so.
Kenny is like 15%, isn't it?
Ken, that doesn't reflect the trust fund investments, does it?
No, so the trust funds are separate, and the trust funds, they stay, and the trust funds, they can be invested in the stock market, which is different. Stabilization accounts like ARPA, any general fund, those are restricted. Again, those are CDs, money market investments. We're not able to invest those in the market.
I think the question lies in the fact that if we're talking about $300,000 or $429,000 of actual investment income, but that's got to be significantly more than, or is significantly more than, whatever money market rate we might be getting on $2 million of ARPA funds. So what other investment income is going to this 429 other than the 3 to 5% on $2 million of ARPA, or are we misunderstanding something else?
Also, like a lot of this money also too was from the borrowing as well. So from the community center as well. So we had a lot of one-time, so as we were, so a lot of like capital projects, grants. So all of the accounts, that all goes back to the general fund.
So how long was the project?
As investment income?
Community.
Correct.
Over 2 years?
We started it in 2021. We actual completion was August 7th, 2 years ago. April 7th was actual completion.
Was that short-term investments with the band, under the bands that were invested?
Correct.
Okay.
There's also left in that balance, there's still 385,000 somewhere in there. It's still there.
I know.
So that's, if that goes away, then
You can have a residual of 10%.
yeah.
Project, but you can't take and bond it and then invest it and try to get the building within 2 years, and you're in arbitrage.
Correct.
So Kenny, the only reason for my questions on this last year and this year is that going back to FY 20, the local receipts were like 2.5 million, 2.6 million, 2.9, 3 million, 3.4. So I'm looking at it and I'm not trying to say we need investment income or anything certain, uncertain or anything that's non-recurring. My opinion is that if we can, release some of that conservatism, maybe we don't need, $100,000 of cuts across there. If we get $100,000 somewhere in here, and then we're still only at 2.5, which is which is still lower than 5 years ago. That's the only thing I'm looking at. I don't feel like we should be in a position that we're cutting anything yet. Override, completely different discussion, but the way that we've been budgeting, the way that we continue to budget, we should have some levers to pull. That's my only point here. And I am all for being conservative. I'm all for doing how we're doing it for, getting free cash and everything else, but start to peel things back, we can change some things in the way we're doing. That's my only point. So I appreciate your details. It all makes sense. That was my only reason for all my questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and my concern is this. So if there are, like every revenue, every account, we try to be conservative. Things could go sideways, and we just need the flexibility. That would be my recommendation. Best practices would have to have that flexibility. So for example, like what happened with new growth, it didn't come in at 250. So that $60,000, that had to come from somewhere else. So to have that flexibility, is key, because when we put together the budget or put together a plan, it's a plan. We're hopeful that we will exceed what we're budgeting. But if it doesn't, we need to have the flexibility to offset, because if we have a revenue deficit, if we're too aggressive on revenues, then it's a concern for DOR. Then we have a revenue deficit, and then that would need to be raised on the tax recap. So that would be a concern, and then DOR would have concerns about us, because each year we have to defend the revenues, and that's something I do annually with DOR. We present the tax recap, and they'll ask questions, and it's like going through a test. And that would be my concern, is just if we do push revenues too hard, if revenues didn't come in, we would need to have some flexibility to offset those decreases.
And, tied to that, we can look at that chart and go, realistically, 2020, 2021, just looking at ambulance receipts. We know we did not get a lot of ambulance receipts because people are in their homes. People were avoiding hospitals, avoiding ambulances. And you only got the sickest of the real sick during those COVID periods. So you see that starting to increase and almost level off. And same thing with building permits. You look at our 5-year average, and then you see like a drop of almost 100K. Well, what could be leading to that? If we knew a 40B was about to break ground, if we knew we already had the water and sewer up to Governor's Landing, the concern is that if we sort of stay with some of the trends, assuming some of those things would happen, now with threats of tariffs that could hit construction industry with lumber, we're sort of eyeing a little bit on the side of caution on some of those. Just until someone gets a shovel in the ground, you can't count on it. And as we saw this past year with Cobbler's Creek, even if they have a shovel in the ground, they could pause, or units could not be selling. And that's always the hard part, looking into that crystal ball.
Well, you're saying we don't have to be so conservative. We're super conservative. That's all. That's my only point.
Yeah.
Before we start cutting things, we don't.
And again, I've said this so many times historically. I understand that the Town Managers Act requires that a balanced budget be presented, but the budget that's voted at the town meeting is the Finance Committee's budget. So, there's wiggle room in places, and, like I said, back 5, 6, 7 years ago, no reflection on you, Mr. Manager. But I mean, if we were 100,000, we come on a town meeting, 100,000, over what the projected revenues were, that was good, because you're gonna make that up. You're gonna make that up at the fall town meeting, on the recap sheet.
I think my memory, Derek and Kenny have always provided a balance, but that doesn't mean we can't be unbalanced, but.
Well, maybe I'm going back a little further.
Well, I think we can both present a balanced budget and maybe be a little less conservative so that we're not squeezing our department heads so hard. And try to find money for $100,000. Like if it was 200 or 3, like if there was a big thing, fine. But like when you look at some of the proposed numbers here for 2026 versus the 5-year average, it's conservative. So to squeeze $130,000 out of there and not be too aggressive feels like it would. I mean, I don't know. It's a lesser two evils. You're the town manager. You do this stuff. You and Kenny and you guys like. I'm not in there, but
We don't want to do some
it's
Now,
We had it this year, just trying to keep it going because.
Nope, I think it's the same. I think it's a valid point, and I think as long as we're all clear-eyed, as long as we're all clear-eyed about what we're doing and that we're taking a conservative approach and that everybody's okay with that, fine enough. But if we have to start pinching,
considering that we have the ability maybe not to pinch this year, and we're having issues with retention, maybe we should not pinch this year and see where we go. You know, like you said, we can be just a smidge less.
There are repercussions.
There are. So 130 is less than 1% of our overall. Am I correct?
yes.
Less than 1% of that non-school.
Yes,
Yes.
Take the
non-school.
schools.
And that's always the wild card.
But it just has repercussions. So
Yes,
our conservative approach has led to good free cash.
yes.
Easier through articles to discuss them because it's free cash. It's not increasing someone's tax rate. So there are.
Yeah.
Given it to me.
that's gonna stop when we ask for a school override and school capital and a DPW and a Holy Angels, and all of a sudden, we're not just paying for everything out of free cash.
Yeah.
So those conversations are,
Yeah.
no, you know.
Now all of a sudden you're impacting them more.
Yeah.
Because now you're saying, okay, why, the questions that come up about FTEs, headcounts,
That's right.
police officers, paramedics, all the things that we're trying to build up
That's right.
are now, okay.
We should.
That's gonna be a fun one.
He's gonna be the first one to pet that
I
dog
know.
parade. Next slide. Okay.
Sure.
I just wanted to also point out in the previous slide, we have increased local receipts. I mean, in fiscal year 24, it was just under 2 million. Actually, it's slide number 9. Under fiscal year 24 recap, we were just under 2 million. And in fiscal year 25, we're at 2.4 now. So we did increase local receipts by over 400,000. So
Which is significant. So that's good to point that out, Kenny, because that's a significant increase.
And when you're increasing the 25, the recap, that was approved by, DOR. So
Yeah.
that, it's not just a proposed budget, it's an actual approved appropriation, or, it's an actual budget total that was approved by DOR.
Yeah.
On to slide number 11. This is just a summary, just showing that local receipts, depending on how you look at it, if you look at comparing the original 25 budget to 26, we're looking at 186,000, about 8.29%. But if you look at it from the recap to 26 budget, we're talking about only 8,791, less than 1%. And the 5-year average, it's been about $2 million in local receipts. Next slide. So next slide, it's a slide on free cash. As you can see, from 19 to 25, free cash is going from 2.1 to 4.1. The next line item is the free cash articles from 1.3 to 2.3 as the highest. As you can see, the remaining free cash line for a couple of years, we were at 799, 509. So this line, this is your starting number. So whenever you're, so for example, in fiscal year 19, we ended the year with 700, just under $800,000 of free cash. That's the starting number for the next year for 20. So as you can see, we were about just under 800, 500,000, and then in 22, 724, and in 2023 we had 1.6. So the 1.6 was the starting number into fiscal year 2024. So in part, I mean, the remaining free cash we've had a higher, significant higher number, starting off the next year. So that will increase our free cash. So right now we have 3.9 million going into annual town meeting. So depending on how much is, appropriated with free cash articles, whatever is remaining, that will be the starting number for next year, the next year's free cash. So right now we're looking at about, 93%. So as you can see, the highest year in fiscal year 23, we had 52% of, free cash that was rolled over into the next year.
So Kenny, keep me honest here, but how we were just talking about how we've had more local receipts or more revenues than what we were planning. That is almost all of those, like if we got 3.4 and we were estimating 2.4, that $1 million is
Shows up here.
flowing there. So if we increase that to 2.7 and we still get 3.4, we're gonna have less in free cash.
Right.
So it's not a direct, there's a whole bunch of other things. If you read through
Yeah,
the document,
but
but that at a high level, that could be one of the things.
But if you look at fiscal year 23 and going into 24, we had 1.6 million going into the next year. If we didn't have that free cash, that big starting number, it would have been under 2 million. It would have been 1.9. So just, because we have a significant amount that we're not expending, that just increases the number into the next year. For a number of years, we had about 500,000 rolling forward, but when you have a starting number of 1.6 into the next year, that's just going to increase your chances of having a higher free cash number. So we're not, the free cash articles, they're, I know they've remained stagnant, but or about the same number, same amount, but we just have a higher number of, free cash going into the next year as a starting number.
If you go back into the late 80s and a lot of times through the 90s, you were coming up with $1.2 million and $1.3 million, $1.4 million in free cash. So, when we started to get $2 million or more, and wow, that's a good thing. We got to keep this thing going. So, and it's hard for the ordinary taxpayer, citizen, whatever you want, how to refer them, that to understand the concept of why you need free cash. So, to try to explain it, I've tried to explain it to people many times, and
Yeah, I mean, I view free cash as a
sometimes
great,
it just doesn't go through.
and just so you know, you could also have,
No, it can't.
I just wanted to know, you can have positive free cash, which free cash is a great thing, and you can also have negative free cash, which is not a good thing. So I just wanted, to remind you, or remind everybody about that. The next slide is available reserves, other than free cash, which is stabilization fund. We have just a little over 3 million. The capital stabilization fund, just a little bit over 500,000. And, these reserves are important, as far as like a rainy day fund, or if you have capital needs in the community, just where the operating budget can't sustain. And when you have these reserves and you're making these capital purchases, you're paying essentially in cash. So if you do borrow for that capital purchase, you're paying interest. So which makes the purchase, just a little bit more expensive. So, and again, any articles for the stabilization funds, they should be for one-time uses, or any one-time purchase, for cap, because these are one-time monies. So you need, it's prudent to match one-time monies with one-time, expenses.
Anyway, way back, you referred to the overlay. What's in the overlay reserve?
It's,
I mean, is there anything there that, anything there that could be turned back?
It could. I mean, that's something that, I've always, if we needed to take that out of, like, for example, because overlay also, it's one time as well. So a one time, could be like, for example, like for, snow and ice. I see a lot of communities doing that. They'll take overlay. Taking a look to see what the fiscal year 24.
I talked with Val the other day, and I think she said they only had maybe 10 or 12 abatement requests for the that had to be in yesterday.
Monday.
Yesterday,
Had to
Monday.
be in Monday, yeah.
Which was yesterday, because it's only Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
Trying to open up the town's balance sheet. Let's see. So as of fiscal year 2024 for all years, 825,000.
In the overlay reserve.
However, what typically DOR looks at, they like to look at your receivables. So there's another. So they look at receivables like real estate and personal property. They like to see that being offset, and they like to see that you have money set aside. So we have 328,000 between real estate and personal property. Yeah, I mean, that's something we could definitely look at, in the future.
There's 400,000.
I would say, yeah, we could have about 400,000 that, could be available, but that's something that obviously the Board of Assessors, they would have to review and release that overlay.
Just a point of discussion, my friend, that's all.
But it's just like free cash or the stabilization accounts. It's one-time money.
Yep.
We want it once.
So the next slide, as I mentioned earlier, we took a conservative budget strategy, budget approach. We're seeing a lot of increases, especially in fixed costs. In particular, with pension, the Worcester regional retirement, there was a 22% increase from 25 to 26. That was significant. So we're also estimating total revenues of 29,663,027, which is a net increase of 3.2. As I mentioned earlier, state revenues are expected to grow at 2.2. Town manager's budget, we're looking for that to be level service and also being a balanced budget, and also going to the spring town meeting as a balanced budget as well.
What's the kind of retirement go up? Did you say that?
It went up 22% from fiscal year 25 to 26, and that includes the savings making that payment. So there would be even a larger increase if we didn't make that payment on July 1st. I mean, I remember when I first came to the town, I remember talking to Blythe about that. And I said, Blythe, if we just make this payment on July 1st, there's savings. I believe at the time it was like $30,000. I just thought that was low hanging fruit. So I had made that recommendation to Blythe. I said, if we just make this payment on July 1st versus on like in October, we can save about $30,000 for the budget. And she wasn't aware of that. So I said, I think we should do it. And she agreed. So we, by making that payment on July 1st, there is savings with the pension. But
I'll
it is going on.
expect my friend from the Board of Health over here, I asked the other day down there, and the trash went up, I think 37, they went up 37,000, and recycling's gone up
Trash
10.
is extremely expensive, and especially recycling, not less than, I think it's a very low number, less than 5% of everything that is actually put in recycle is capable of being recycled. And then we pay for it to be disposed of.
It's cheaper to throw it in the trash.
It most certainly is, but the state of Massachusetts won't let us do that. We'll be fined. I asked that. And somebody asked me if the town of Upton wanted to be the test case. And I said, no. But it unfortunately is very, and many people throw things that are not capable of being recycled in. We figure they charge us on average 45%. When we've been audited, it's been higher, that's incapable of being recycled. But we have a pretty good relationship with Harvey.
So can I just get back to the 20% increase? Is that the retirements have been police though? There've been other significant retirements that be driving that up? I mean, there shouldn't be, the benefit shouldn't be increasing by that amount. It's because we've had more people retire. Is that what's happening?
Kenny can probably answer this better. It's not only retire, but then also the total future exposure, right? As far as total payroll.
So it's adding, when we add staff that are going on, it's going to increase that future cost. Okay, so it's a combination.
Yeah. And not only that, we're also getting closer to the full funding. So I believe it's 2036. So we're about 11 years away. So if there's any, retirements, and that's also based off the payroll as well. So any retirements, and then we also have we still have a significant number of employees that are contributing 8%. So, just that, 1% delta, that also adds to the unfunded liability. But just now, any retirements, especially where we're only 11 years away from becoming fully funded, that will have a significant impact as well. So hopefully, in 2037, we'll be fully funded, and then we could be focusing on OPEB at that point. That's the other unfunded liability.
37 ain't gonna be my problem.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
Paul, one never knows.
Just starting to hear a theme over there.
so on this slide here, the state budget, I mean, they're, very, they're also conservative as well, and they're only estimating about 2.2% as far as growth. And this is something we'll have to monitor if there's any increases or decreases. So based off this budget, this is what you see or you will see in the town manager's recommended budget. On the next slide, this just shows you a budget summary. The first column is just the approved fiscal year 25 original annual town meeting and what we're projecting for fiscal year 26. As I mentioned, we did reviewed all the different revenue types. So we're looking at a 3.2% increase compared to last year. On the expenditure side, the largest increases we're looking at are public safety and also employee benefits, especially with the pension assessment, such a large increase. Also culture and recreation. It's a smaller budget, but it's a 10%. It's $48,000, dollars. But in public works as well, there's a 5.3% increase. So the education, the debt service, this, it kind of pops at you. It's a negative 100%. That's actually BBT. Fiscal year 25 was the last payment of the debt exclusion from the improvements. I believe that was the roof, for the debt service. So that's the last payment. So in fiscal year 26, it's zero. So that goes away. But this
There's gonna be more in FY 27.
Correct.
Joe,
So that
goal is 2%,
Yes,
and merit is.
merit is about 2.45 to 2.5, depending on not only which collective bargaining unit you're in.
I'm not concerned about that. That's in there.
Yeah, so the compensation plan that was approved ranges from 2.45 to 2.5 for the merit.
So for 4 to 5%.
Kenny, you still good with the 100,000 on the OPEB?
That's something I would like to see if we could increase, but if, pension is a concern, as well. But if we could increase the OPEB, as I know, there's a lot of competing needs. If we could increase that, I think I would recommend that.
So
Perhaps.
what would you recommend, my friend?
I would say any increase. I would say even if you go to 150, I think it's already better than 100. I mean, I remember we started, I thought, with like 50,000. We've slowly increased it. I think we've stayed at 100,000 now for a number of years. But I would recommend any increase would definitely would help. So even 150,000, if we were able to do it, I would recommend that. Because the liability, it's $8 million. It's roughly about 8 million. So, that's something that we'll have to, tend to at some point. But like I said, any increase, I think that would be beneficial for the town.
What is our outstanding liability right now?
For the OPEB,
Yes. Yes.
I know it was approaching 8 million. We just recently had a study done.
Do that every couple of years, right?
Yeah, so we do that every a couple of years. We just had the full evaluation done. I was going to include that as part of this presentation, but I took it out towards the end.
You don't propose to put anything towards stabilization, we can put that towards OPEB. Because we're already over 10%.
Now, the thing with OPEB, once you appropriate funds to OPEB, they can only be expended for health insurance costs for retirees. Once it's appropriated to that, you can't now change the purpose. I know, especially at the beginning, I know there was a lot of communities that had concerns. It's different than much different than stabilization account, which after that you can change the purpose.
I was just saying that we've been putting in money into stabilization. Now I think we're over 10% that was the target. They need to put in there. So instead of putting in stabilization, we put more towards it. That was just a comment.
Okay, so the liability, the total OPEB liability, it's I know it was increasing. It's actually at 6.4 million. We have net assets of 1.5. So our net OPEB liability as of June 30th, 2024 is 4.9 million. So we have a funding ratio of 23.6, currently. So the 4.9 as now, that would need to be, that would be the net, that would be the unfunded liability. So that would be something that we would have to fund at some point.
I mean, if now's the time, right? Like the question is now the time, right? We've been doing it at 100 for a long time. Is now the time to bump it to 150? I certainly support salting away more money and putting a little, like, just sort of incrementally getting at it. It still feels like a phantom number to me because the reality is it's barely a drop in the bucket to what our actual liability is. So whether it's 100 or 150 to me seems more like semantics than anything else. But if Kenny's recommending increasing it, if you guys are recommending increasing it, certainly 150 is fine by me. I don't know how we.
I know you'd like to throw $1 million at it. We can't.
Yeah, well, I'd like to understand from the state what the plan was for all municipalities that are in the same boat that we are, which is in this grossly upside down funding model. But That's not our issue to solve necessarily.
Is that always put on override to fully fund it? Well, life went there.
I think that's a very different conversation than adding another $50,000.
I think we have.
Yeah, and so, but go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you got to chip at it. That's the bottom line. You just do the best you can and.
So
I mean,
I don't know.
Which is more than what other towns in this position are doing.
Exactly.
To add to what we're already doing, so Kenny and Harris started something that was very positive that we can.
Right, we can build on
Just
that.
keep
Let's build
building
on
on
it.
it.
Right, if we can do it without too much pain, then we should continue to build on that.
It's something that's not gonna go away.
Nope.
There's nothing that says if we increase it to 150 that we have to do 150 every year going forward, right? We can do 150 then
No.
drop back to 100.
No, but I would say though, talking to the rating agencies, I mean, if we do go back, they would want to know why. But I would say, we should do a steady increase and something that's sustainable going forward. I mean, even also, the actuaries, they ask us as well what the plan is. We've been studying now with 100,000. If we do increase it to 150, of course, that'll affect our liability. It would go down. Like I said, the rating agencies, they would like to see, I mean, yes, you could decrease it, but a steady increase, I think that would be the best way to approach this. I mean, the rating agencies, they all know about, this, about this unfunded liability. This is not just for us. I mean, this is across the Commonwealth, and then also across the country. I mean, what I would say is, in 2037, once the pension is fully funded, at that point, I would say you'll have a pension windfall, and then at that point, we can make a much more meaningful contribution or what is remaining at that point. But again, this is just a plan, but I would say if we can increase it even a little bit, I think that would go a long way. And stick to that
just
plan.
one other silver lining with a lot of changes we've had in staffing, because when we hire new employees, they then also have to contribute to 2%. All the changes that we've had have started to at least make some form of contribution towards that.
Does that apply to our contractual employees as well?
Every new hire, yeah.
So we're chipping
biggest
away
hit-
at it on multiple fronts, which is good. That's all you can do.
The biggest hit we took this year on retirement would have been the former chief. Is that right?
Yes.
So the portion of the fiscal year 26 budget, that the last slide, that was the last one. So the next one is the community comparison. All this, the data in the next few slides is all from the DOR municipal financial from their dashboard. So we took the 10 communities. There were 2 communities, Hopedale and Sterling. I was not able to find their financial data, and that's because they have not closed their books. They have not had free cash certified yet. So Hopedale and Sterling, I don't have that information because they have not reported it. The next slide shows free cash by community. As I mentioned, Hopedale and Sterling, they have 0. I just don't know what that number is because it hasn't been reported. But as you can see, it varies by community. Actually, the highest community is actually Sutton at 4.3. And then there are also other communities that are much lower. Like for example, Mendon in fiscal year 24, they were 713,000. And then in 25, it went up to almost 2.5 million. So, as you can see, each community, there's a story for each one. But as you can see, free cash, I've seen this over the years, last few years, it's been on the rise for a lot of communities.
Kenny, that's not necessarily an apples to apples to apples to apples. Correct?
Correct. Right. And the other thing I also wanted to note, like for example, we have a separate enterprise fund for water and sewer. There are some communities I know still out there that have their water and sewer operations under the general fund. So then it would be part of this number, or could be less because they're subsidizing their water and sewer operations. I mean, DOR, they have always recommended best practices to have your own separate water and sewer so that it's self-supporting. They have always made that recommendation, but each community, they make their own decisions. In some communities, they prefer to have their water and sewer as part of their general fund. So I'm just giving you an example. You know, it's not apples to apples because each community has a different story, has their own different situation than us.
It's a good point, Paul, and I think the sort of voiceover here, right, is like from a free cash perspective, where the voiceover is we're in pretty good shape, right, relative to these other towns where we're at the higher end of having free cash, and presumably having free cash is a relatively positive thing as long as you don't become too far of an outlier on the positive side. Is that a reasonable inference? People agree with that, or is there another?
It all depends on what your goals are when you're budgeting and doing everything. So we are, I don't want to say we're focused, but we
have a policy, we have a fiscal policy.
To have free cash, but there are other towns like that I'm sure Kenny can talk to that they will be putting all of that in their taxes. They'll be not as conservative on the revenue side. They'll be not as conservative on the cost side. So their numbers are closer, so they'll have less free cash.
Yeah.
But they'll have more in their budget.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I know some communities, they budget for free cash and they'll put that free cash in their budget, which I don't agree with that. I don't think that's best practices.
I was going to say maybe that's something that would be helpful when we look at things like this. So thank you for putting this together, because I think having the cross community comparison helps these kinds of conversations. And I think another thing to add in here that would be useful would be sort of what we think, you know, what's Upton's target and goal and position on free cash. We have the policy. So are we at policy? Are we at a policy? Are we behind policy? It's your point. Let's make sure we're managing to ourselves, as that's the number one factor, is are we where we want to be as a town? But also what sort of the DOR best practices are for free cash and where we are relative to that, and sort of what whatever the benchmarks are, right? Like, I don't know what the benchmarks are for these things, but like that helps too. So seeing both of those things. So how do we compare to other towns? And then how do we compare against benchmarks or best practices? I think will tell it will make it easier for all of us to feel like, hey, you know what, we're doing really well, or here's an opportunity to lean in here, or, you know, we should do more of this or less of that. I think everybody trusts that we're doing a good job, and we sort of, a few of us feel like we're doing a good job, but we need to make that more readily accessible to the public, to point earlier.
Another thing, when you look at that, Bolton, Foxborough, I'm not sure about Sterling, Stowe, they all have regional school districts too.
Yeah.
It's Berlin, Bolton, Acton, Boxborough. Sterling is part of Wachusett, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I don't know about Lancaster. Sutton's up there on their own, Douglas is up there on their own. So that is another thing you have to factor in. You have to factor into this.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we want to spend going through all this, so I defer to the chair on looking at the calendar. But the big thing I wanted to look at or note of the next 6 or 7 slides is the total outstanding debt community comparison, which is on 23. So I don't know, do you want Kenny to go through each of these, or do we want to?
The only thing I wanted to point out here is that
Yeah.
Kenny and Derek or whoever came up with it, we had that 10% number. So we're ahead of the 10% number. This is what that
Free cash.
as a benchmark. So you can see some are much lower.
They've got it in
based on
here.
total
That's right.
Operating budget, so.
Yeah.
So on this slide, you know, DOR, they used to recommend 3 to 5. They've recently increased their percentages from 5 to 7. In the town policy, we're actually lower than the DOR recommendation of 4 to 6. But if you look at the community comparison, yes, we are on the higher side, but there are communities that are over 10%, like Sutton, Mendon now is over 10%, Lancaster's over 10%, Douglas has been over 10%, Foxborough is over 10%. So, we're, this year we're 14%, prior year we're 12. So we're starting to see some communities here, they're over, going over the 10%, on free cash. And also DOR, they've also increased their range as well. And again, free cash.
The bond rate is up this 10, 12%, 12, 14%, right?
Yes, they do.
And I
They do.
think the conversation here is right. So if our town policy is a goal in the range of 4 to 6% of annual budget, and we're at 14%, do we have a conversation about moving towards our target?
Financial reserve policy adopted by the Board of Selectmen is 10%.
10% stabilization.
10%.
No, that's,
This is free cash. We're talking free cash.
Free cash, you're talking stabilization.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, all right.
so again, in the previous slides, we talked about free cash, about a lot of the free cash has been rolling, especially in the last couple of years, where we've had, like 1 year we had 1.6 million rolling into the new year. So we've had a significant amount of free cash that has been rolling year to year. And that has contributed to the larger free cash number.
That's right. So it's a good conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how anyone else feels. We can keep going through each additional slide. Are there any specific questions or?
The only other specific thing I wanted to talk about is because we're talking about a DPW in the fall and we're talking about two school articles in the spring, and we've got a Holy Angels bogey out there and we're talking about fields and capital investments, right? Like a lot of that's going to be funded through debt. And so we should probably spend a second looking at slide 23 and our total outstanding debt, and just all level set around what we're talking about here. It's like, I look at an outstanding debt of 16 million relative to some of these other towns. I see that obviously our debt service as a percent of budget at 2.74 is low because we have incredible rates. So that's absolutely fantastic that the cost of servicing the debt is very low because we nailed the community center. But the total outstanding debt, if we went from 16 and we do $10 million for schools and $15 million for a DPW, does this number go up to 40, 50? But like, what's our?
Well, we're not going to be getting the interest rates that we had before.
Well,
So.
yeah, and this is even just sort of right, totally, exactly. We won't get, the rates are up for everybody. So that would, the debt service would be more expensive, but our total outstanding debt is a conversation worth having.
Yes.
So that we can be articulate about it when people ask us.
Kenny, what was the rate on the community center? 2.8?
No, that was actually, I believe it was like 1.9 net interest cost. That was a record at the time.
Yeah.
And we also refinanced all our debt at the time. Everything is right now, all of our debt, all under 2%. It's like 2 and under.
And I mean, ultimately, it's up to the voters to decide, right?
Exactly.
Got a lot of, I mean, we're talking about doing a lot in a short period of time here.
A lot coming down the pike.
Does the finance committee
It's all
have,
gonna go on the ballot.
so, okay.
Do you want to just have Kenny fly through the slides?
Of them pass, you're talking about this.
So
That's what I'm talking about.
did you
So
want
it's
to
worth
talk about?
it's worth acknowledging that, right? Like, let's be clear-eyed about what we're talking about going to town meeting to do, which is significant, right? That's all. I know,
If it's dead on the ballot, if it's dead goes on the ballot, it's a wash because the receipt cancels out the expenditure.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about the total outstanding.
I'm saying the impact,
It's not gonna impact your budget, because
the impact of the budget.
if they vote
Okay.
for it, you're paying for it directly, so they wash each other out on the revenue and the expense side. That's all he's saying. You're saying
Okay.
something different. He's
Yes.
saying From a budget perspective, it has no real impact.
Yes, if the voters approve increasing their taxes significantly, then of course, yes, it's a wash from a budgeting perspective. From an overall debt perspective, we're adding significantly to our debt relative to what other communities have as a percent of debt for their budgets. It's okay. I just want to, right? I mean, that's a fact.
That's true.
Okay.
In all honesty, this debt, the original plan was when school came off or whatever these things came off, it was intended to be, something was gonna be there to take its place. Okay, which if that happened 4 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever it is, you know, you would have a significantly different number of debt as ratio, okay?
Right, but not
We've been
relative to other towns.
And I'm just, we stopped talking about the DPW thing, what, 21 and 22?
Yeah.
All right. And this whole school thing. Joe and I have been to these meetings for the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, no,
You know,
yeah.
Would
And
you-
we encourage them to ask for money for fields because people want fields. That's what we're hearing that from constituents. So, you know, we encourage that. It's okay. I just want to have a conversation about it. That's all.
Would you like for me to go through each slide quickly?
I don't think he needs.
I don't think we need to unless someone on finance
No, I
thinks
think the
it's getting late.
only one of the other is that if we wanna.
that's a whole separate conversation.
I think after we have the multi-board meeting
Yes.
and we get a better idea, it probably would be beneficial for us to move on our side, say, if here's what the schools are doing, what are we planning on the town side and how do we prioritize? How do we maybe address some of these? That may be something we pick later on in February, and gather back around again to have
I
that
think that makes
conversation.
sense because until then it's the wild card and we can speculate all we want. We still might be speculating. One never knows.
And you know, in retrospect,
Mhm.
you're not gonna know what the number down the road is here
Mhm.
until 8, 12, 13, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay.
But not May 12th, not March,
No.
March 12th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I'm good.
Is it-
Kenny, finance,
Any
does
other
anyone
further-
from finance have any questions? Anybody online have any questions? I don't see any. Paul, Steve?
Are we gonna meet next week?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I sort of have it tentatively on the books as far as meeting again. We can have more of a discussion about this. I'd like to start bringing in some of the larger departments, Dennis, starting first to start talking about his budget. That will give him a chance also to talk about some of these projects that literally we're a month away from commencing, like $8 million worth of roadway projects. Bring in a couple other departments to start that conversation and look at potentially either scheduling a special meeting on February 28th to continue with some of the others, like police. So that for the March 4th meeting, which would be our regular meeting, we can then sort of not separate, but FinCom can concentrate on their things. We can then concentrate on some of our things. So if that's scheduled.
But your things, our things, are your things.
Yes.
You're gentler, Paul.
It's so
never
hard
thought
to
you'd
get
see it,
used
did
to.
you?
So, I mean, and that's where Paul's right. You know, once we get end of February, beginning of March, we're gonna know where the schools are coming out and some of these. And you have a copy of the memo that I drafted for the select board, a copy to finance committee and Kenny on, that basically identifies some of the reductions that were made to balance the budget. This is line item so that it's easily identified as far as restoring if we do make some other changes. But also it does highlight that while departments were given guidance as far as level of service, there were 3 departments that asked for very minor increases. All demand-based, ESS 7 additional hours. And associated with that is increase in phone expense for the drivers, increased programming funds. The library was looking for 6 additional hours to give to a part-time person who currently works 8 to meet the demand for children's programming. And then recreation to fund a part-time, basically a supervisor down at the beach during the summer. Maria works 40 hours. Our beach is open more than 40 hours. This would allow an additional adult to be down at the beach to supervise and make sure that we have coverage at the beach. And if Maria is on vacation or sick, we have someone that is there that can manage as well. So these were things that I was trying to accommodate because they address some policy issues, say at the beach, that we could be liable for, and others. We have a high amount of use at the senior center, and transportation is one of those things that we've seen a doubling since we were in the former center. So same thing with library, very highly used, and they see the demand for additional programming, which 6 hours a week would support.
I just have make one comment. The recreation, everything you just mentioned, no issues. The one thing in there that doesn't make any sense to me is that we're now going to cover the increased services that are needed.
Yeah.
They should be covering that in the revolving fund. They should increase everyone $1 at Kids at Play to cover it, whatever they have to do. This should not be coming back to the general fund and us taking away from some maintenance.
Yeah.
That was the condition of the revolving fund, that all salaries and benefits had to be paid up.
And that's one of the fun thing about this budget process is that the Recreation Commission felt that there were activities that they wanted Maria to do that then were tied to programs. And so either
Figure that out, Joe. That's not.
it's a department, it's an elected board request. I'm trying to accommodate.
No, I'm just.
And then
That's what they should be doing with the revolving fund, is figuring it out. Instead of coming back to us and saying, hey, we're gonna change something and you guys need to now fund some of it, like, that's not what we.
One of the things that they were trying to make the argument is that through their programming, they're covering non-program tasks.
Such as,
So when they're doing researching for developing programs and things that then, don't work out, if they are doing like the Christmas, Halloween contest, the work to coordinate the Red Sox events, there's things that they would like to be able to do that are more, say, administrative, that don't go right back to a program that then is paying for that. If the message ends up being that, look, no, we're going to take that 15 and put it back into maintenance or some other line, that's what this process is about, and we can relay that. But it's an elected board.
What is that they have these
Yeah.
fees that they're charging.
Yep.
Within those fees should be these additional costs to expand their programs. Like that's how you run a business, or you run something like that, where you're always trying to expand and grow it.
The recreation thing in the summer is a summer camp. Let's
Yeah.
call it what it is. It's a summer camp. People pay to send their kids to camp.
We heard throughout COVID that we were getting kids from other places because they were full, or we were much cheaper. So like maybe there's an offset there.
That's a conversation for another day. They have other things to do.
I'm just saying, that was the only thing, I don't disagree with.
Yeah.
Expanding everything, the community center is good, everything else.
In the beginning of your last treaties there, did I hear you say something? Did I hear you say Paul is right? I thought I heard that.
It's a different ball.
I thought I heard that. Did I not?
well, tomorrow afternoon, you can watch the recording and just keep replaying it over and over again.
We'll send you the
We
transcript.
could all be dead tomorrow.
Oh, we could be.
That's right.
Hopefully not.
There's the.
See, we made a comment about gentler and softer, and look at where it got us. Oh, we're so far in left field.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
25.
Kenny, thank you for your time.
Yes.
We appreciate you coming, and appreciate all the work you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabby. Have a good night.
Experience you doing a little
Thank you.
Good night. You too. So Joe, Scheduling of meetings, departments and committees, we do the 28th.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it may be easier to have it as a special meeting on the 28th.
I think you should. Well, my own personal opinion, because we've got to get it
I
done.
gotta go see what's going on now. Give this.
Do a special meeting, another special meeting on the 28th.
Yeah.
With the departments and the committees trying to
Yeah.
get everything wrapped up.
Yeah.
So we'll do the,
I'm here.
yeah, the 11th.
Doing the 11th?
We're doing the 11th. We're also going to do the 28th with other departments. So
Yeah.
should finance be at the 28th? Should they?
I think that would be great. I don't think we're,
February, last day.
February, last day of February.
It's got Friday.
I don't know.
It should be.
They're in front of me.
Next week's the 11th.
Yeah. it's-
I'm sorry,
Friday,
it should be the
yeah, that's
25th.
Friday.
25th, not the 28th, sorry.
Okay. Good catch. For those of us who don't have the calendar and can't even believe we're in February yet. God bless. All right, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You.
Have a great night.
You say that sarcastic.
Huh?
Oh, sarcastic.
Looks too. You should have been in the conference room.
Yeah. I
Like,
thought you were still in there,
Oh, God.
so I opened and a blast furnace.
Yeah. Yeah, we do, because it's never this warm in here. It is, okay.
And
next-
Sue even turned them down.
I know, but we all dress, Lori, we all dress
Yeah,
for winter,
great.
because it's always cold in here. And it's like a little sauna, yes, we are dying. We are dying. Okay, next is the
I'm not
Economic
dying.
Development Committee. The appointments,
Oh.
so. And my computer just decided to freeze.
Do we have?
Do we have everyone here? I know Lori's present,
Russ Berger was on, might have.
Russ Berger was on.
Yeah, there he
Oh, I
is.
see him, good. And then do we have, Brett Roberts on?
I don't.
He might have been on, but.
He might have
we
been on.
might have lost him.
Yeah, we might have lost them.
You didn't see him, so.
So, okay, if we do it by how the applications, you must be Russ Berger.
I am.
Thank you.
Evening.
Good evening. Okay, let's see, we'll do it by thing. I have Lori's, we don't have Brett Roberts, so the next application would be Lori. Lori Woden, would you like to speak and explain why you'd like to be, you want to do? That's fine, it doesn't matter. I was just going through my applications and yours was prior to his. So if you don't mind going first, and then Russ will get to you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, well, not.
That's fine, thank you.
So, hi, everybody. You know me, Lori Woden. Let me tell you about myself, right? And why I want to do this.
Yes, just why you'd like to be on economic development.
Okay, well, I've been in town a long time. It's almost 38 years. I feel like I have a good sense of the town, and I was on a downtown development committee, so I have a sense of what was decided about this part of downtown. I've been involved with all kinds of programs in town, from everything from Sustainable Upton, which helped to create the Lakes, Ponds and Streams Committee that I'm on now, and also the air quality monitors that we're putting all around town, all different kinds of projects, things like that. So I feel like I know the town really well. I was involved with the library, all the attempts to build a library in the senior center and that sort of thing. So as we go forward, I think we're on the crux of real growth here, and I feel like sustainability needs to be at the heart of what we think about as we go forward. I think it's very important, especially where we're beginning to get traffic and we're beginning to get parts of town that are, there's more growth now. We had a moratorium on sewer work for such a long time and we didn't have growth, and now we're getting it. And especially with water and sewer going up 140, we're going to get a lot of growth. So we need people to participate. I actually had looked at this a long time ago and hadn't seen any openings. And I don't know if it was not listed correctly because I was interested in it for a while. And then I watched a meeting recently and I saw that there were 2 openings and I said, well, I'm gonna see, because I like to be involved with how we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know a lot about the town, you know, we are environmentally oriented, we're a not spraying town, we think about things as we, that we do here. We're not careless about how we grow. People are involved, and I've been involved in trying to get more people involved in town government and that sort of thing. And there's just a lot of exciting things going on. I think we're at the precipice of real growth, and I'd like to participate in.
Okay, thank you. Any other specific questions? Yes.
No, thank you.
Mr. Berger, would you like to tell us why you'd like to be on economic development?
Sure. Just as a heads up, I was in the hospital with pneumonia till yesterday, so if I start coughing, I apologize. I'll shut my mic off. So I've been a
Do your
resident
best,
of
please.
resident
Go
up
ahead,
for
sorry.
17 years. I owned Red Rock Grill and Bar for the last 12 years up until actually we sold it exactly 1 year ago. So I have quite a bit of business background and business in the town. I'm part of the Upton Men's Club, so I've been involved in projects there, mostly the fireworks. But I've owned up to 7 rental units at one point in the town, so I'm familiar with that. And knowing the project that they're currently working on, I have a lot of familiarity with that. I do currently semi-retired, but we have a food truck and also a 75-acre farm on South Street. I have a culinary degree as well as a architecture degree. So I have been able to help with that part of the project as well. 3 sons, 1 who went through the school system here. I'm hoping economic development will lower taxes. I pay, I don't know, almost 30,000 in real estate taxes and excise taxes currently a year. So I would love if somehow that could be reduced or the increase is reduced. I definitely appreciate the lower rate this year. So I guess I do have some more time in my hands. I'd like to get involved with the town. My wife was on the Board of Health for several years, and I have a little bit more time now, and I'd like to give a little bit more back to the community.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Any questions, Maureen?
No.
Brett?
Nope.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion, or how would you 2 like to handle this?
I would,
We have 3 applications and 2 spots.
yes. Prior to Brett not being here, I was supportive of both Russ and Lori, just given the sort of opportunity for 2 seats and the balance, and definitely want to bring some new folks in too. So I want to encourage Brett to engage in other ways, but for this one, I would certainly be happy to nominate both Lori and Russ.
I
Maureen?
have to agree. I would like to have talked to Brett Roberts too, seeing how he's new at this and looking for new people. Laurie's got so many committees under her belt.
Well, you know, I thought about that and I thought that might be a concern, and I would be willing to let one go. I've been a library trustee for 31 years and I'd be willing to step back from that since I feel like we've accomplished a lot.
Okay.
I think it's important if you're going to be in a committee like this, to have really good knowledge and understanding of the town. I think that takes some time.
Okay.
That's some.
Okay. I agree. I would have liked to speak to our 3rd candidate. I don't know if he came, or there's so much. I'm glad you were able to come, Russ, because everybody I know is sick with one way or another. So I appreciate you powering through. You look pretty good.
I'm feeling much better than yesterday. If this meeting was last night, it would have been rough.
Four.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say, did we get any feedback from the
committee.
Economic Development Committee?
EDC basically had said, they did not vote.
They did not.
There was, the chairman had indicated his own personal indication. But there was no action taken by EDC.
Okay.
He indicated his also, and Julie Junkus did, and then he also.
Right, but it's not
No vote.
not the vote of the committee.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we did ask for that, but that's fine. So I'm fine to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay.
I move that the select board vote to appoint Lori Woden and Russ Berger to the Economic Development Committee for the remainder of the one-year term to June 30th, 2025.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Welcome.
Thank you.
Russ, if you're not aware, you get a chance, come in and Denise will swear you into the committee.
All right. Thank you very much.
And you, yes, you can do that as well.
Thank you
Yeah.
both for taking the time.
I can't hear, Laura, you're talking over everybody. No, it's okay.
Does it only go to June 2025?
Yes,
So we're on a annual cycle where we do all reappointments in June for then the following year. So this is just to fill out the remainder of the one-year term.
Yes.
Then we will send out an email verifying that both of you, provided you swear yourselves in with the town clerk, then want to get reappointed, and then those come to the board to consider reappointment.
Which is what we do for all the appointed boards and committees.
Yeah.
Standard.
it's standard. Okay. All right, thanks for hanging in there. We know the budget was very scintillating.
It actually was fascinating. I really learned a lot there.
Oh, good, good.
Spread the word.
Yes,
See you later.
we actually
night.
do amazing things. Thank you. Thanks for
Good night.
coming tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, future meeting topics and meeting schedule.
So I guess the short is February 11th is going to be busy.
Yep. Yeah.
And yeah, this is where I clearly wrote February 28th instead of
Okay.
25th, so.
But we got it now.
Yeah, we fixed it.
So,
And then will be March 4th, right?
exactly, yep.
All right. We'll be seeing lots of each other.
Yeah. Bring your dinner.
11, 25.
Pack a bag if we keep this up.
Got this.
At least we change your clothes because we don't know what the heat is gonna be. We're either gonna
This is
freeze or die.
Do they double our compensation if we do twice as many meetings?
You
Yeah, we'll
could,
just see it.
you can put that in the budget.
Yeah, get it.
Yeah, oh, boy.
All right, so, the only thing we have left is approval of the regular and executive meeting minutes. Do
I
I
have
hear-
no problems with them.
I had no problem. We did, a couple of clarifications on the executive minutes.
Yep.
So, I think we agreed that the clarifications. So if I hear a motion,
I move that we approve the regular meeting of January 21st, 2025, and the
executive.
executive session as admitted for January 21st, 2025.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye,
Aye.
unanimous. Thank you. And do I hear a motion to adjourn at 8:38?
I can make that motion.
There you go. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're done.
Did it.